Hi everyone, it's Astra, and this is my thoughts on Larptubing. Larptubers. There has been some controversy over Larptubing, especially content creators like TechnoLarp, for example, which I'll respond to. But I'm just more going to be referring to kind of the general community before moving on to some of my more controversial takes, in which I promise I'll try to be as balanced as possible. Now, when it comes to LARPing or the LARPtubers category, what is Astra's opinion? Astra joined LARPmingo's community server after, unfortunately, reading a post about what happened to their editor Lottie, his editor Lottie, which was very, very unfortunate. But what do I think about the category? Because, I went to the first virtual LARP con, so to speak. I think it's an amazing thing. I am probably one of the most pro LARPtuber people that you'll find right now. And the reason why that is, I have been on YouTube for a long time. I don't say that to boast. I say that because I think that to a point that a lot of people that have been on this platform, this YouTube platform for a long time, we're talking 10 years since 2016 or even, the early 2010s, has seen a shift. And I talked about this on my life stressors video. We've seen a shift where individual content creators doing, fun kind of casual commentary or kind of like, I don't know, novelty going out and doing things in real life that were interesting, or just like silly, fun, creative content, right? And there were problems back in kind of the mid 2010s. There were a lot of content farming channels, just like now. There were a lot of, and we'll get into that. I don't think it's the same as content farming. If you're wondering, like, well, what about LARP tubing? Isn't that? Um, there was a lot of like stealing, like straight out stealing or copying like memes on Facebook, for example, and there were people got away with more shit. For example, like 2015, 2016 were kind of more unregulated internet days where you could do more or less anything that you wanted to. And also, clickbait was very prevalent in those days. So I'm not saying that in these days it's less prevalent. It's people will not watch this kind of content anymore. So I think that there were some notable problems in these days of YouTube, but there were a lot of individual content creators, some of whom are still around. However, they the problem is that they kind of went to things like podcasting or something more kind of sponsory, corporate, or they just don't publish content anymore like they did back in the early or mid or early 2010s, or some of them have passed away, which will be the second part of this video. So I think that this is pushback against this kind of AI slop, and I don't think LARP tubing can be compared to AI slop, by the way. Kind of this AI slop, this Fern Sunny V2 kind of documentary, which at the time that Sunny V2 was around, despite some of the controversial videos he had, it was kind of new. It was kind of interesting. It was kind of compared to casual commentary, but it gets exhausting because every single documentary now there's this very corporatized competitive editing aspect to it that I think saps a lot of the kind of balance out of the entire genre. And it's incredibly frustrating to see that. There's you know there's a lack of that kind of stuff now, and I think that, and of course, like gaming YouTubers and everything like that have now moved on, that are now kind of in a new area in their lives. I think that LARP tubing is a resistance to that. It's a resistance to this I think it might be more subconscious. Like if you ask a LARPtuber why they're doing this, they probably wouldn't straight out say. But I think a lot of people are becoming tired of this very corporatized, very serious, kind of heavy commentary or just slop in general. And there's not really anything in between. There's not really any good kind of these kind of 2016 good layers, so to speak. I think that people are getting really exhausted of that, and so they're going out and they're becoming LARPtubers, and they're creating content, or they're adding on top of creators, the few creators that are still kind of sticking true to this kind of style, adding on additional content, and I think that's a really good thing. I think that we need to get away from this. People are just getting exhausted of this kind of repetitive content that's been getting more and more bland and professional over the past, I would say, 5 years. Maybe, probably since the COVID lockdowns, I would say it's been getting more and more this way. So, when it comes to, YouTubers that are kind of active, maybe their old content they're not publishing anymore, or kind of adding on to gaming content. For example, if there's a gaming YouTuber like Flamingo, then you have somebody like Larpmingo who adds content on. And so, because content creators like Flamingo are not going to have, they don't have unlimited energy. Their editors don't have unlimited energy. So they're only going to publish so much content out per day, or maybe things of the sort. Maybe they aren't able to due to like a situation that's happened in their lives, and in which case the audiences can go and they can watch similar channels like Larpmingo. And I don't really think that this overall takes from the main creator, so long as the person that is kind of LARPing as them is they're always kind of tied to that person's relevancy, and they can never be above 100%, right? If they're imitating somebody, they can't really overtake them. Like that to me seems kind of like an impossibility, if that makes sense. Like if you base your content off somebody else, then you're never going to be able to kind of steal their views in a sense, or their for example too. I think LARPtubers can actually bring attention to bigger YouTubers. I think they can help them out. For example, when I heard about Lottie and I heard about Larpmingo, which was extremely sad to me, I cried several times over it. um, it reminded me of Flamingo, and then all of a sudden I subscribed to Flamingo before like making that video and everything, because I'm like, I watched Albert's stuff, but I haven't watched Flamingo in forever. So I think that LARPtubers can kind of bring back audiences that are more inactive for the main creator. I would say it probably benefits everybody more than it hurts. My only thing is that I do think that LARPtubers need to establish that they're not actually the real creators, and I don't think that they should get a huge ego that they're the real deal, because their content is based on a creator, kind of an already established persona on YouTube. And I think they can kind of get full of themselves, or think of themselves as the main character, when they're always kind of secondary. And I think that also, I think when you're not yourself on camera, like, I think that, I mean, because here's the thing. I think LARPtubers, like, they're huge fans of these channels, right? And so they don't mind, like, they like kind of acting on the camera as this other person. But I think that if it becomes too much, if they do it too often, or they do it excessively, or they just try to integrate themselves more and more, that ultimately everyone's personality, everyone's kind of style is different, and it might exhaust themselves. And they may not, especially if they're kind of expected to act that way in real life. If they are, for example, facially recognized in real life, I think that that can be exhausting. and I think it could be detrimental to their health and their well-being. But as long as it's in good casual fun, maybe you can give a little bit of a chunk, not a lot, but a little bit of chunk to the creator, the original creator, for that kind of established persona. I think all things considered, this is a much more positive than a negative thing, and it is kind of a revolutionary push against corporate YouTube, and like a silent one, and like a silent pushback. I also think that this idea of these YouTubers, and I am responding to Penguin Z0 here on like the Technolarp situation, but also other people. This is more of a general thing before I get into the more controversial stuff. I think that it is not you cannot equate Larptubers to AI slop, because it takes a lot, and in some ways even more effort, to kind of, your goal is for the audience to try to get like a nostalgia, or kind of resonate with your acting, so to speak. And so you always have to maintain a very high standard in order to maintain your core audience, which takes a lot of work on its own. That's not including the filming style. The editing has to be similar to, and I mean, they may not do all of this, but you understand that this is going to be a very competitive space. I feel it already is getting pretty competitive. And I genuinely do believe that it does take a lot of effort. You have to edit the videos to be similar. You have to have ideally the same or a similar voice. You have to play similar games. You have to have a fairly consistent uploading schedule. I mean, not really, but because everyone has their own like autonomy, like to upload whenever. You have to do a bunch of things. It's much harder said than done. Sure, you get that established persona, but when all things are considered, it's much harder, and in some ways, it's even harder than becoming, in the aspect that you start out as somebody that's popular. Sure, you can rise to fame much easier than just playing random games, and I understand the opportunity is much more, but in certain aspects, it's harder. It's much harder to try to, if you're not very naturally good at it, to kind of copy and have audiences resonate with you versus other people that may kind of copy the same creator or the set of creators. So I do not think that it can be, as long as AI is not involved in the making of the video, I do not think that it can be qualified as AI slop. I think that it is genuinely hard content to put in, and in a lot of ways, quantitatively, they if they're editing and things of the sort, they're putting in just as much effort as the original content creator that they're mocking. So I disagree with that kind of comparison that some people are making. Now I'm going to get into the more controversial opinion about like the Technolarp situation or deceased YouTubers. I think first and foremost that Technolarp is in the wrong. Now, I actually hate the guy because I've heard and I've seen things about him that I'm not going to speak here, but I really do not like it. But we're going to exclude that. We're going to exclude that because there are going to be other people in this space that are trying to copy deceased YouTubers. So I think that asking the family for permission should be a mandatory thing. I also think giving them a good cut is a very good step if you're going to copy deceased YouTubers. I'm not saying that these people like Technolarp should not be able to profit off of it, because if they have editors or they're editing and they're making this content and they're having to, I mean, Technoblade was excellent at Minecraft. You have to play the game very good. You have to maintain your skills in order to play it. I think that he should get some of the income because of that, because it's not AI slop. He's putting in a lot of effort into his content, so to speak. What I don't like, however, is that he did not ask the family. He did not ask the dad. He asked the dad, and the dad didn't respond, and he still made his channel. I think that is a very kind of disrespectful thing to do. And so I'm not going to. Do I think he's in the wrong? Absolutely. I absolutely 100% think that he is. And he could have tried to LARP as any other channel. Maybe not as well, but he still could have done it. There's still a lot of YouTube content creators that are still publishing content on this space that are not deceased, that he could copy, so to speak, that he could imitate, and we wouldn't have this problem. But for as the rest of it goes, right? Let's say that he did get permission from his father. So here's the thing, right? When we talk about deceased individuals, I personally believe that Technoblade would have made a video with TechnoLARP on the situation. Like, they would have filmed at least one video together. Just at least one. Assuming that the LARPing category was alive, which I think at some point or another, because of the YouTube landscape, it would eventually arise. I think that he would have. I think he would have liked his friends to. I cannot speak for Skeppy, because Skeppy was a personal friend of Technoblade, and when you film a video together, I would say that's a little weird. I would say that's pretty weird. But I'm talking about as for the fans, because the fans don't have really any kind of new content from Technoblade, right? He passed away, and he's not able, obviously, to make any more content as a result of it. And there's like tributes and all of the sort, but it's like these days are now over. You know, there's nobody that really there's nobody kind of alike to Technoblade that we can, it's not the same anymore, right? So I think that if the fans resonate with this person, aside from the family and the shit that I really don't like about him that I personally know, I think it could be a good thing if you donate donate a very good portion of your money to the family or to the charity. You get permission from the family, and this idea that, well, we don't know what this deceased person, Technoblade, would have thought of somebody making a channel after his death. I think that's valid. However, there are a lot of situations in which we kind of have to we kind of make decisions based on the idea that they probably would have liked it, right? So I'm not saying that, like, this had to be done, for example, or like it was. I think that he would have liked something like this. I do, as somebody that used to watch the Technoblade channel. I think that it was done in the wrong way. I think that if he is donating 50% of his money to cancer research, and preferably I wish that he gave some of the money to the family, I think that it could be, and he got permission, I think it could be a good thing. And I don't really like the idea of, because they're deceased, there's nothing that we can, I don't want to say nothing, because I mean, this is a big thing. There's things that we can't really know, so therefore we shouldn't have it. I think that he would have liked TechnoLARP, so to speak. I just don't think that it was the right thing to do, like I said, because he didn't wait for the family to reply to the situation, right? Or try to talk to the dad, or even give the dad maybe some income to help him and his family out. But I think that for the fans, it's very devastating when somebody is like so, like they're so like important in your life to watch, and they just go, and there's not really anything afterwards besides like the tributes and everything of the sort. I do feel uncomfortable having this opinion and sharing it online. I do. But I think this has to be said, is that I do think there are ways to kind of go about this that would probably cause more good, especially because here's another thing, right? I think that if you LARP as a deceased YouTuber, I think that you always have to maintain yourself as somebody that is secondary, right? To try to raise awareness for them, to try to kind of continue on their legacy and not eat up their legacy, right? And so Charlie was kind of talking about like, Techno LARP could now be considered the new kind of techno blame in the friend group. And I think that is very harmful. I think that creators that take on this kind of thing will have to be extraordinarily responsible. And as we know with YouTube, creators are often very irresponsible when it comes to really, really anything you can think of. I think creators have to be very careful and responsible about kind of trying to maintain the legacy, trying to that legacy aspect that they're trying to kind of revive, the nostalgic aspect, so that they're not literally replacing them, so to speak, because they technically are not, it's not the same as somebody that's alive that's uploading a bunch of content and you're basing it off somebody that's continuing to upload. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about this situation. I feel uncomfortable saying this, but honestly, I think this is the right way to look at it. Now, I'm not speaking for Technolarp himself because again, of what I mentioned, and also there's things that I've seen that I really do not like. But in regards to that, that's what I think. Anyways, that's my opinion on the Larptubers. Thank you. Bye bye.